You're listening to the JJS Podcast. Up to this point, the most successful companies around the world have had entire departments made up of full-time employees dedicated to providing marketing communication support, leaving every other company without those resources at a distinct disadvantage. Well, the world has changed, and we have to change with it. That's why I'm going to take my 15 years of experience of managing marketing communication strategies for some of the biggest brands in the world and share that knowledge with you so that it can improve your business and your life. So if you're a business professional or an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to deploy the right strategies given your position and the position of the audience you're trying to reach, you're in the right place. Hey guys, welcome to the JJS Podcast. I am your host, James Lezcano. First, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I'm really excited about 2022. And I hope you are as well. First, before we get started, just some simple housekeeping. This will be the first episode that we actually upload to our new YouTube channel. So we're going to start having videos of the podcast episodes for YouTube, as well as uploading them to the normal channel, Spotify and Apple and whatnot. But so this is kind of our kickoff YouTube version of the JJS Podcast. We're excited about that. That's one of many things that are scheduled to come for this year, and so we're excited about that. So just wanted to get this episode in. Today we're going to talk a little bit about myself and my background, as well as a little bit about JJS Consulting Group and what we do. A few people have asked me to do an episode like this to kind of explain my background and who I am, and because people, when they listen to the podcast, are probably wondering, who is this guy and why is he talking about all this stuff, marketing communications and business and whatnot. So to give some context, if you're not interested in hearing any of this, it's no hard feelings. You can go ahead and turn it off now, but that's what this episode is going to be about, just a little background about me and what we do and provide at JJS Consulting Group. So let's start with me. I have about 15 years of experience in marketing communications. So I started my career as a brand journalist for a land development company that essentially owned the overwhelming majority of the commercial and residential real estate of this community in South Florida. And in a very forward-thinking move, decades ago, their communications department created a newspaper to be distributed for free throughout the community. And so I would act as a journalist and, interview local businesses and Teacher of the Year, things like that, with the overarching goal of making the community more attractive for people to come live and work. So what we today would call brand journalism. So I did that for a few years. I then went to a PR firm for a paid internship, and that was just straight PR work, securing interviews with journalists, writing byline articles, things like that. I went from there to, and I'm not going to mention, I don't want to name drop company names. I'd prefer to just keep it really high level. I went to work for a global trucking logistics supply chain company where I worked as a dedicated IT communications resource. So they were going through this transformation, which a lot of companies did at the time, and they were migrating from these old legacy systems to these new cloud-based ones. And so they needed some change management comms done internally throughout that journey, as well as externally position themselves as technology leaders in the logistics and supply chain space. So I did that for a few years. Then I went on to I went to the supply chain arm of a very large, well-known QSR brand. QSR is quick service restaurants. And I worked for a membership co-op that acted as a supply chain arm for this QSR brand. And my job was to communicate to the franchisee members of this brand different things to make it more profitable. And in addition to that, I manage the external brand of the supply chain arm organization itself through PR and social media efforts. That's where I was when COVID hit. And as you can imagine, QSRs and restaurants as a whole were impacted significantly. So this organization was impacted, and they had to reduce a sizable percentage of their workforce. Now, during that year, the pandemic, the first year, I started doing some consulting and some contract work. I had this agency called JJS Consulting Group, and up to that point, it was kind of one-offs, side stuff here and there. But during the pandemic, it really kind of ramped up because there was more of a need for virtual-based content obviously. So people needed websites, people needed social marketing, some PR stuff, things like that. And so that really started to ramp up during the pandemic. And I've been doing that ever since. And so that brings me to JJS Consulting Group, what we do at JJS Consulting Group. If you heard the intro, what I briefly discussed is that a lot of these large companies have marketing communication departments dedicated to their, that aspect of their business. And, they're filled with very talented, creative people, and they use, a lot of resources, and it's expensive. Okay, it costs a lot of money. So historically, small businesses, entrepreneurs, mid-sized companies, things like that, could never afford that level of support before from a marketing communication standpoint. So the idea of JJS Consulting Group is to provide that level of support that, large companies have to smaller guys and mid-sized companies. And in addition to that, fill that void for large companies that had to dramatically reduce their marketing communication resource headcount, or who want someone to come in as an outside party and kind of assess the situation, what's going on, and then pull together a report and kind of a recommendation for what they should do from a marketing communication standpoint. Because it's difficult to do that if you work for somebody, right? If it's somebody who works for you, you might get some insight, but you're not getting the full breadth of it because there's a unique dynamic there at play. So that's what we do. We, if you're a larger company and you need someone to come consult, you need someone just to, bridge the gap for a while in terms of marketing communications, we're much more affordable than full-time staff. And if you're a smaller company or a mid-sized company, kind of scale to the need, we can provide a similar level of support for you as well. And that's kind of what we do at JJS Consulting Group. And I created the JJS Podcast because as things were happening and unfolding rapidly, I recognized that there was a lot of people who either had now assumed a lot of marketing communication responsibilities because there was so much attrition at their organization. So, a lot of HR people have been, assigned these tasks, these duties. They don't know where to start or where to begin because they don't have any experience. And also there's people who, more and more people, which I've talked about quite a bit on here, that are going out on their own and starting their own business, but they can't afford a full-time person or whatever. So they need to kind of handle marketing communications on their own for a while. And so this would be a resource for them. And then also, finally, for executives of larger firms or whatnot, to get some insight on what people in my demo are thinking, professionals in my age group, similar level of experience, things like that, kind of what we're thinking, even if you don't agree with it, which I'm certain many of the executives listening to this show do not agree with the stuff I say. And that's fine, but at least it's a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, as to what we're thinking and how you can, adapt your strategies in light of that. So that's the purpose of the JJS Podcast. I didn't do this early on in the show because the purpose of this wasn't to be, overly self-promotional or anything like that. It was truly meant to be a resource for folks. And fortunately, it turns out it has been. There's a lot of people, I've been pleasantly surprised by the response. There's a lot of people listening to the show, a lot of people who are engaged, who reach out to me and say, hey, be cool if we talked about this and whatnot. So I'm pleasantly surprised. It really started out as like a tool of therapy for me. It's kind of a way to be, even if no one listened, it was kind of just a cathartic release to kind of speak my mind. But that pretty much sums it up, who I am, my background, and what we do at JJS Consulting Group and what this podcast is about. So, that should answer all your questions. So, but like I said, this is the first episode we're going to upload on YouTube. So we're excited about that. And look out for new episodes coming out. We got some great stuff. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you are watching, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, so you know when the next episode airs. And as always, good luck out there. Hey, I want to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to review and rate it so that other people who are interested in these topics can easily find it. Be sure to share it and tune in every Wednesday for a new episode of the JJS Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and remember, communication without strategy is just noise. Until next time.